Hello, and welcome to this video outlining the software improvements to CRAFTS leading up to the November 2025 quarterly report. This marks an important milestone for CRAFTS. Until now, CRAFTS has been made from a developer's perspective, with model creation and validation as primary concerns. With plenty of credibility to its name, CRAFTS is now quickly approaching a full release, so others can use the library for wind turbine modeling in Daimola. Ahead of the first user-facing release, our team has packaged CRAFTS into an internal release for final testing and improvements to the user experience. This is the first time CRAFTS has gone through the release preparation process, and it was the culmination of several important steps outlined here. The finishing touches to our team's DevOps workflow have been put in place. Through file restructuring and encryption, CRAFTS was repackaged into a user version. The documentation of all our features has been improved. Many of the models used to test CRAFTS have been refined and revalidated over time. Our regression testing software is growing more feature-rich and easy to use. And finally, an additional supporting software is under development to assist users in automatic generation of data files. Taking a look at Azure DevOps, there are three key additions to our setup. The first is forced workflow for tasks. The second is enforcement of our peer review process. And finally, we have new visual progress representation. We'll start with the dashboard for progress visualization. One of the key focuses of our task breakdown in Azure DevOps has been for documentation. Here, you can see a pie chart to track our documentation progress as a whole. We're currently about 2/3 of the way to complete documentation in CRAFTS, but as we put the finishing touches on our works in progress, that figure will reach 100%. We also broke up the documentation progress into smaller subcategories to identify which areas are closest to completion. The next feature in Azure DevOps is our forced workflow for tasking. In the sprints board, you can see a test task for demonstration purposes. When a task is created, it will be assigned to a developer and appear in the new column. Then, as the developer begins work on the task, it is moved to the active column. And from there, it should be either closed out in the case that no changes were required, or proceed to peer review. So if we take this task and try to move it from new to the peer review column without passing active, an error appears with a message describing the issue. If we take this task and move it to active, no errors appear. Then from here, the developer should move the task to peer review, where one of our designated peer reviewers will take a look at the code. As part of the review process, the reviewer must complete a checklist of items and can leave feedback on the task. Attempting to move the task to the next step, which is QA review, will result in an error due to enforcement of the peer review process. Reviewers must select their name and the review status to allow the task to proceed. Moving on to the internal release version of CRAFTS, preparation for this release has been underway for many months now, including file reorganization, model parameterization, and even things like the design of icons and block diagrams to make the user experience in CRAFTS as intuitive as possible. The difference between this internal release package and the prior versions of CRAFTS is the encryption of this version of CRAFTS in Daimola. This allows users to retain access to all of CRAFTS' features while protecting the internal code that comprises our models. For instance, if I navigate to the nacelle library, the nacelle model is perfectly visible and can be opened. Similar to a developer's view in Daimola, the block diagram can still be viewed and components can be double-clicked to open the parameter window and see their most important properties. In addition, the components themselves can be opened to look at their block diagrams. The documentation layer of each model is also unchanged by encryption, so users can still look at all the documentation and instructions on how to use each model. The big difference is that after encryption, the Modelica text, or the underlying code, of each model is now hidden. This protects the most important parts of CRAFTS IP without inhibiting users' ability to view models for their own understanding. Another aspect of preparing for library release and encryption is the export of all the library's HTML code for documentation. So the entire package's documentation has been generated, as seen here, into PNG files of our images and icons, as well as HTML code for the writing itself. This makes it very easy to export CRAFTS' documentation to other platforms beyond Daimola. As CRAFTS' technical maturity has developed and our models have been updated, an important part of the release preparation process is to validate these changes to each model. As part of the initial release preparation, focus was placed on focal campaigns 1 and 2, and models were tested with their updated versions to ensure that results do not stray adversely over time. Here we see the documentation for focal campaign 2, lowercase 2.1. It explains the features of the model and how to set it up, and in particular for lowercase 2.1, the surge initial condition is placed 9.06 meters from its equilibrium point. So the model has already been prepared with this condition, making it ready to simulate for users and ready to regression test for developers. The validation process for this model began by obtaining the published experimental results for focal campaign 2. Then from here, some post-processing was applied to the CSV, seen here, just to ensure that the format conforms to our regression testing code. Using this data for validation, our model was run through CRAFTS regression testing program and then provided these results. Here we can see the testing results for surge and sway from the specified load case. Each plot contains CRAFTS' result compared to the reference result and the surrounding tolerance bounds. The regression testing program has also recently been updated with the capability of testing across the frequency domain. So here we see an example of testing FFTs of the surge signal. Following, we have other results like the roll, pitch, and yaw, or the mooring tensions in all three legs. The results of regression tests like these inform us about the state of our models as they're updated with new features, ensuring that our pre-existing results stay valid over time. While our team has had regression testing capabilities for some time, this is a feature we would like to extend to users as well. The ability to quickly simulate and post-process results is highly desirable for most Daimola users. A new feature is the integration of regression testing into Daimola itself, providing an intuitive user interface from which to call a regression testing program. As seen here, upon opening a model and navigating to the toolbar, a window appears asking users to enter desired inputs such as the model to test, the reference data to test against, or the output directory. This calls the Python-based testing script. I've sped up the simulation and testing process here. And then upon success, we can navigate to the output directory and view plots of all the desired variables for testing. The final recent addition to CRAFTS has been the development of a software to assist users in generating data files. This has become an important aspect of usability because, as CRAFTS models have developed in complexity, many of our models' input parameters have been stored in data files. The format and contents of these files is not always evident to users, and Daimola's use of MATLAB binary files leaves a dependency that can be frustrating for users without access to MATLAB. In response, development has begun on a user-friendly graphical interface to receive basic inputs from users and then handle the calculations, formatting, and file generation in the background. We'll take a look at the work-in-progress version of the data generation tool that has been developed so far. Different variables are displayed with text boxes for users to fill. In this case, generating a data file for tower structural properties asks for parameters like density, the elastic and shear moduli, or the number of multi-body elements. If there is any confusion regarding what a variable represents or how it should be entered, hovering the mouse over top reveals a tooltip. For example, the density rho should be a scalar value, while the number of mass body elements must be a positive integer. Now we'll enter some example values in each field to demonstrate some dynamic features. The variable beta can accept either scalar or n by 3 inputs, so after filling the first field, Tab can be pressed to reveal a new text box. Noting that multiple fields are incomplete, if we try to generate a data file right now, an error appears in a warning page telling the user that fields cannot be left blank. This shows that error catching and easily understandable warnings have been a key focus of development so far. Elevation is also a unique variable, as it allows 1 by n entries, which are dynamically handled by the graphical interface. This, in turn, affects the tower thickness, whose input array must be of the same size. In this case, the entries for tower thickness and elevation don't align, so another warning appears. After all information has been properly entered, we can press the Generate button, and we're met with a message saying that our files have been created successfully. Opening File Explorer in the current directory, we can see the generated files and preview them in MATLAB's import wizard. The tower data file has discretized body lengths, centers of mass, and more, all formatted to work directly with CRAFTS. This concludes the November 2025 software development update for CRAFTS. As a recap, recent improvements in CRAFTS have been coordinated around the milestone of our first internal release. These range from task administration in Azure DevOps, to finishing touches on the CRAFTS library itself, and even supporting software development like regression testing and data file generation. Thank you very much for watching.